Dolphins made a splash signing this morning and continue to work their way through roster cuts. We're breaking it all down here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. We are trying to forecast the future of what the Dolphins' 53-man roster is going to look like by 4 p.m. today. So we ran into this a little bit yesterday already. I got to record the show. There's going to be some transactions. They're going to happen in rapid succession, but I don't want to make you guys wait till 5 o'clock to drop a show today. So like yesterday, we dropped the show, and as I hit finish on recording, Mike Hilton gets cut and it's not included. And I talked about him in my initial 53 forecast, right? So going to try to stay up to date through the recording window, but we will have a final 53 show after the initial 53 is finalized. And then we'll look at waiver cuts or waiver claims that they may make. There's a couple interesting players out there already, but one player that was not on the radar for the 53-man forecast that is going to make the 53 is Rasul Douglas. The Dolphins, it was announced this morning, have agreed to terms on a one-year contract worth up to $3 million, or worth $3 million, I should say. So used to all this contract lingo of base value and max value and reporting fluff. No, it's a one-year, $3 million contract for Rasul Douglas per reports. And that is the big add this morning to the Dolphins secondary. And this was the player that the Dolphins seemed like they had eyes for all offseason long. Josina Anderson reported at the beginning of training camp at the end of July that Rasul Douglas said, thanks, but no thanks. Going to go about my merry way. Have a bunch of other teams that are interested in me. Well, we get to August 26th and nobody else has enough interest to put a contract in front of Rasul Douglas's face. So lo and behold, signs here. Now, I would be lying if I said I wasn't just like everybody else, and I'm a little leery about a former Buffalo Bills defensive back coming down to Miami to sign on a one-year contract, right? The Dolphins did it last year with Jordan Poyer. It was a miserable experience in just about every way, shape, or form. Jordan Poyer didn't seem to enjoy himself either. Going to give it a fair shake, as every player should. You treat every player in isolation without carryover or biases or subconscious judgments from other past experiences for other players from other teams and so on and so forth. Is it a little bit of a flag that it's August 26th and Rasul Douglas signs a contract and didn't have a greater market up until this point in time? Sure it is. I think you can acknowledge some of the strengths and weaknesses in Rasul's game, that there's elements that make a lot of sense for Miami. There's some restrictions with where he's at in his career that maybe didn't have him be super appealing to every NFL team. But this potentially, the question is, with him coming in now, how quickly does he transcend the depth chart? Does he claim a starting spot in time for week 1, which is less than 2 weeks away? Does he come in and supplant Jack Jones or Storm Duck as one of the outside corners? Here's the strengths on the Rasul Douglas player profile. Rasul Douglas, excellent tackler. I think that's the first thing from a run support, tackling, physicality standpoint. He's what the Dolphins want in that regard, and tackling and improved tackling in the back seven has been a major point of emphasis for just about every transactional move the Dolphins have made this offseason. They want to get better at getting guys to the ground. They were the NFL's number one team in fewest yards allowed before contact against runs. And they were like bottom of the league in yards after contact allowed. So you had a really good structural run defense, but you couldn't tackle, and therefore you were giving up more yards than you should have, more than anybody else in the NFL. It's a flag. It's a problem. And that's where Rasul Douglas has the opportunity to help you. He's a highly instinctual player. He's seen a lot of football. He's started 15 games in each of the last 2 seasons. 2 years ago, it was split between Green Bay and Buffalo. It was a trade deadline deal for a third-round pick. Last year, started 15 games for the Bills. It's not a guy you leave in press man coverage and leave him on an island and play single high free safety and expect him to run with guys down the sideline. If you're going to do that a lot, this was not your guy. But for a exotics rotation-based defense, I expect you'll see a lot of cover 2. When you see cover 3, will be leveraged over top of guys and playing with vision back to the quarterback. Those are kind of the schematic boxes to check, if you will, for where you could put Rasul Douglas in a position to still be a sufficient NFL starter in 2025. I think the Dolphins can afford him that. But obviously, this is an external player coming into your program, late stage player coming into your program. What is the investment into the scheme? What is the buy-in? What is the cultural implications where Jordan Poyer comes to Miami and he's supposed to be a leader for your football team and he's supposed to be a leader in the secondary, and instead he's just here for a good old time on a vacation, on a late career tour through warm, sunny weather, and then he leaves the team and does his Good Morning Football spot after he leaves this offseason and says, yeah, I drove to play with a punctured lung with so-and-so, but I wouldn't have done that for these guys last year. But that's the kind of guy they brought you in to be. Now, do I think they're bringing in Rasul Douglas to be that vision of a leader within the locker room? No, but he is the experienced guy in the corner room. He's the veteran presence at this stage, and very clearly he had convictions of what he felt he was worth and what he wanted to play for. So I don't think this is just like a shoe-in, everything's all good, super fired up. Do I see a lot of risk with the ad? No, I don't. I think this is a very low downside move for the Dolphins. So with that in mind, I think it's a potential add of a sufficient level starter to your cornerback room to play outside corner. My question is, who are you? Is it depth? Is it Storm Duck insurance? Is it Jack Jones insurance? Is it insurance for both of them? I think that's where I'm really interested to see how it kind of shakes out from here. But Rasul Douglas on a 1-year, $3 million contract signing that happens on cut down day. So you're going to have to cut an extra player off your 53 than what you would have otherwise because you got this one locked and loaded. Okay. We added a starting veteran cornerback to the cornerback room. A little bit of insurance. Should help you sleep a little better at night if you have some concerns about the proven nature of the Dolphins secondary. And this has been their guy this whole process. Barry Jackson of the Herald reported that the Dolphins have made 2 separate offers to Rasul Douglas, and apparently he's reporting that Douglas was the one that blinked. He said that the terms of the reported contract that he's agreed to terms with is, quote, very, very similar to the previous 2 offers that the Dolphins gave Douglas. So this is not Rasul Douglas sat here and played hardball and milked a bunch of extra money out of the Dolphins. This was the Dolphins got this guy who's been their guy, who they had eyes on this whole time at their price. Hard to be mad about that. And let's hope you're right, because if you're right and you had conviction in it, and this was your guy the whole time, and he ends up being the scheme fit that you presumably think he can be because you had him in for a visit in May or June, and you've made him multiple offers and he finally signs it, you might have a little something here. But you got to be right. We'll see if they're right or not. But I don't see a lot of downside with the move. Now, cut updates. We've had a bunch. We've had a bunch yesterday. We had a bunch that have happened already today. There's more that are coming today. We're going to get into all that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today, August 26th, is officially FanDuel's Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches for 24 hours. FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, you're eyeing a long shot division winner, or you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 kicks off, now is your time to shine. You can get the Dolphins to win the AFC East at plus 700. that tickles your fancy. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now. FanDuel's future is one day only, and it is today. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back here on the show. It is time for me to ask a favor for everybody who tunes into the program, whether you're listening or watching. If you're watching, there's a QR code on the screen. We're putting together a survey to learn more about our listeners here on the Locked On Network and make your favorite podcasts even better. We're asking you to go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. And everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. So I have a cuts tracker up at A to Z Sports, and I am doing my darndest to keep up with all of these cuts. I'm doing it for Miami. I'm also doing it for A to Z for the Baltimore Ravens. So we're having a good old time being glued to the timeline. But the Dolphins cuts thus far, I want to read through the ones that have been reported as of me sitting down to record this program. Obviously, Ryan Stonehouse at punter was released a week ago as part of the team calling the punter competition. But running back Aaron Shamklin, cornerback Mike Hilton, offensive tackle Jalen McKenzie, running back Mike Boone, offensive lineman Jackson Carman. You remember when it was the absolute end of the world when Jackson Carman was signed to a futures contract in January after he had that horrible showing in offensive tackle against Houston? And it's just, the offensive line, they don't care. Futures contract's a different kind of animal. Jackson Carman's been released. Ben Stilley, defensive tackle, offensive lineman Mason Brooks, cornerback Ethan Robinson, offensive lineman Addison West, wide receiver A.J. Henning, cornerback Cam Dantzler, tight end Pharaoh Brown. Those were the ones that were reported at some point throughout the course of the day yesterday. As of this morning, things got picked up again with a couple of cuts that moved the needle a little bit. Quentin Bell, edge rusher, Matt Dickerson, defensive tackle, Derek McClendon, edge defender, Theo Weiss, wide receiver, Patrick McMorris, Eric Ezukama, Andrew Armstrong, John Saunders, the rookie safety, and Grayson Murphy. As of this exact moment in time, Grayson Murphy is the most up-to-date cut that the Dolphins have. Surprises off of this list. I'd have had Mike Hilton on for the veteran presence. I also was not expecting Rasul Douglas to sign this morning. So maybe that makes that an easier pill to swallow from a veteran experience standpoint in your cornerback room. Pharaoh Brown, we talked a few times about Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's play wasn't necessarily why I had him on the 53. It's they don't have a backup wide of Julian Hill if Pharaoh Brown is cut. So that's why I kind of felt like Pharaoh had an inside track to stay on the team. Dolphins apparently are going to plan on finding someone else some other way to secure that backup wide tight end because they released Pharaoh Brown yesterday. Those were the two that I had on my 53 projection, Mike Hilton and Pharaoh Brown. I know some people were surprised with Quentin Bell. Some people were surprised with Derek McClendon. Some people were surprised with Grayson Murphy. I think the challenge of that group has always been, what is the best role that you can secure for somebody to provide value on defense or special teams? So I was not super surprised. Felt like Quentin Bell had kind of plateaued and had, for where he's competing with guys, you were either going to need to be continuing to show growth as a pass rusher, and it was something that it just didn't feel like it took. So Quentin Bell is lopped off. Matt Dickerson, my strategy with Matt Dickerson, I left him off my 53. It went back to, I think you've got a pretty decent chance to stash Matt Dickerson on the practice squad and keep him on your practice squad and then elevate him for game day if you want to. And then if you have an injury, you can elevate him onto the 53 again. And maybe he earns it and stays. So I wasn't necessarily surprised on that front either. The other surprising names that some people had included John Saunders with the safety situation, but That one gets tricky because we don't know what the medical status is of Dante Trader, and we don't know what the medical status is of Ashton Davis. Some of the reports from the last week or so gave you some kind of indication that maybe Ashton Davis was making some pretty good progress. So Saunders, Colbert as another safety in that room. There's no news on Colbert at this stage, but Saunders flashed early in camp. But that's the kind of guy I think you can justify big, long safety, practice squad. I would not be one I would be upset about seeing back on the practice squad for Miami. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21 cuts plus Ryan Stonehouse is 22 cuts technically. I believe the Dolphins had 38 transactions, but they've added Rasul Douglas to the mix. So you're looking at, you're a little over halfway. I've heard rumblings of a few, but like for guys that are getting cut, like I'd take that pretty serious, right? Like I'm not going to get on here and hop on and say, oh, I hear so-and-so or so-and-so might be out. Like I want to be respectful of those guys because maybe they haven't had that conversation with the coaching staff yet. And I'd hate to put something out there like that. So with what we know now, I think you can probably glean tight end is a room where you're going to need some reinforcements, but also at running back with what Mike McDaniel had to say yesterday about the running back position. Now, it's all good news with Devon Achane at this stage. No setbacks there. No setbacks with Austin Jackson at right tackle. So we're continuing to progress steadily there. But Jalen Wright, Mike McDaniel said probably unrealistic to expect Jalen Wright to be ready for week 1 of the season. That means you're going to have to add a running back. And the only other 2 backs you had was Shamplin and Mike Boone, and they both got cut yesterday. They were both informed of their release yesterday. So you kind of move your eyes to the waiver wire, and Cam Akers is a name that shook free yesterday. Maybe you have your eyes on there. I don't think you should have a hard time finding a viable 4th running back, if you will. And obviously with Jalen Wright down, it would be your 3rd running back. You should have plenty of options with cuts because a lot of teams carry 3 backs. And the math there is going to give you some names that I think are worth your while. The tight end position, where Pharaoh Brown's been released, there's already 2 names that have shaken loose that I think are worth our consideration. We'll get into them next here on Locked on Dolphins, in addition to other dynamics as we wait for a finalized initial 53. That's coming your way next. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked on Dolphins is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner. You can feel the buzz in the air. Football season and fantasy football season are here. Everyone's researching, drafting, building what they hope are championship squads. If you haven't joined a league yet, now is the time. And all the good stuff is happening over on Yahoo Fantasy. Me and my hometown league, we've been playing on Yahoo for next year will be 20 years for my hometown league with my buddies from high school. We've always played on Yahoo Fantasy. You should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league, with the season kickoff on September 4th, now is time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers a ton of fun ways to compete, including their brand new Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team each week is eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. If you want to play instantly with friends, you could try the new Draft with Friends mode. And if you prefer the classics, you can get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. The NFL season kicks off on September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. 2 tight ends who have been informed across the league of their release that has my attention. We do have another cut release courtesy of Barry Jackson, Miami Herald. BJ Adams, undrafted rookie free agent corner out of UCF. Has been informed of his release as of 3 minutes ago. So I want to make sure I add that one onto the list. The first tight end is Greg Dulcich. I did a story yesterday for A to Z after the Dolphins cut Pharaoh Brown. I said 3 places the Dolphins could go shopping for a tight end. The Giants tight end room was number 1 on the list because they invested some serious resources between Greg Dulcich and drafting Thomas Fidone, and they had Theo Johnson as a breakout candidate from last year, and Chris Manherns was in that room, and they had Daniel Bellinger on a contract. Like, they had 5 tight ends. And that's before you include Darren Waller on retiring to get traded to Miami in the first place. Dulcich has had health problems, but he's an extremely talented player, good receiving profile, profiled in college as a sufficient level blocker at UCLA. Had a great Senior Bowl when he went down the Senior Bowl. He was there. Thought he was best tight end there that year. It's been released. It's a waiver candidate. The challenge for Miami is they sit 13th on the waiver wire. So there's no guarantee the first guy that shakes loose, you're going to secure, because you have to have a third of the team that passes up on that player before your waiver claim would register. So Greg Dulcich is on my radar for sure as a potential waiver claim. So too is Jelani Woods with the Indianapolis Colts, who just so happen to be, that's right, week 1 opponent. And Jelani Woods has had his own fair share of injury issues. He hasn't played since 2022. He's missed the last 2 seasons. And get your jokes off. Well, he's perfect for the Dolphins. He's injury prone. And I get it. I can't argue with you. But at the same time, anybody who's cut at this stage usually has red tape of some way, shape, or form. And you're bringing somebody in to kind of be an inline insurance policy. I think Jelani Woods can do that. He's like 6'7", 270 pounds. Just a monster-sized human being. Maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. Like, I'd be willing to find out with what you have in the tight end room. And then maybe you can stash somebody else on the practice squad. But Jelani Woods and Greg Dulcich are 2 guys that have been released that I'm dialed on. Because I think there's a lot of, kind of like the Rasul Douglas signing at this stage of the game, especially for what the Dolphins signed Rasul Douglas for, not a lot of risk with plenty of reward upside for those kinds of names, and you have a very apparent vacancy, in my opinion, for an inline player in your tight end room. So that's kind of where we sit. As far as my initial 53, I do want to shout out who's left on the bubble, what we're looking like. Now, we mentioned the 2 out of the 53 I had on the roster. The 2 that did not make the cut already are Mike Hilton and Pharaoh Brown. We do have the wide receiver rooms been whittled down where Weiss, Henning, Andrew Armstrong, and Eric Ezukama have all been informed of their release. It's a matter of, do they move on from one of D. Eskridge or Taj Washington? There's some level of unknown with Jalen Wright. Do you end up on one of the reserve lists? Are you an IR to return designation? The same thing can be said for Jason Sanders. That came out yesterday. Adam Schefter reported around 4 o'clock yesterday. Sanders is expected to be sidelined 4 to 5 weeks with a hip injury, so the Dolphins are going to need a new starter for the beginning of the season. Season openers in about 2 weeks. Right? Sanders, that timeline makes him another potential IR to return designation, where maybe they just put him straight on IR as one of the 2 that you can put on without having to cut. And that would then be a miss for the 53 projection, because this was made on Saturday immediately after the game, before we knew that Jason Sanders was looking at missing several weeks worth of action potentially. So that's a question mark. That safety room is not super settled. I did have McMorris and Saunders being cut. I did have Jordan Colbert being released as well, and had the Dolphins keeping the other 5, but none of them being placed with an injury designation. There are some unknowns there. What is Ethan Bonner's status? I had him as an IR to return designation. Is he a shorter term timeline, in which case maybe they keep 6 and I have a miss there? Muhammad Kamara's kind of the 6th edge right now that hasn't, like Bell, Murphy, McClendon informed of their release. Kamara, there's been no update as of this point in time. Please don't get mad if there's been an update in some way, shape, or form. But it'll be interesting to see how this thing all plays out. And then, of course, when we get the initial 53, we will react to that. And then we will react to waiver claims. And then we will react to whatever transactions come at the end of the week, and then we're getting into game week the following week. So it'll be here before we know it, and keep it locked in. Right here on Locked On Dolphins, it is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'm Kyle Krabs, and I am out of here. Go Fins.